It's a great state. I came up here believing that the thing that I realized today as I look back not only at the Ken 2 case, but at other cases that I've learned about from across the country, there are simply too many problems with the system. There is no way that the system can guarantee that the innocent will be protected. We rely on junk science. I relied on junk science. I didn't think it was junk science at the time. When I was in the DA's office, we called it expert testimony. Sometimes it is expert testimony. Most of the time it's expert testimony. But sometimes it turns out to be junk science. There's at least one case from Texas in which it's absolutely certain that a person who was executed simply didn't commit the crime that was charged. In fact, it's now clear that there was never a crime, and it was all because of junk science. It was an arson case. And yet the prosecutor in that case was just as sure as I was when I prosecuted Reuben Ken 2 that a crime had been committed and that he had the right man. We rely on jailhouse informants, people that are in jail and are looking for some sort of a deal that serves their interests. I made deals with people that you wouldn't want to have dinner with on Friday night. I can remember a case in which a banker's wife was kidnapped and murdered. And when we caught the two people that were responsible, I told the cops that what I wanted them to do was to figure out who the shooter was, make a deal with the other guy to testify against the shooter. We would give the non-shooter a life sentence, and we would get the death penalty against the shooter. The police called me 4 or 5 days later and told me that they couldn't figure out who the shooter was because they were both pointing in different directions. And so I was 34 years old at the time and smarter than anybody else in San Antonio, and so I made the decision that because of my keen insight and good judgment that I would decide who was telling the truth. And so I had, with the permission of their lawyers, I had these two defendants, or soon-to-be defendants, brought over to be interviewed by the district attorney. They came to the office in shackles, and and I sat them down and I interviewed them both. And I satisfied myself that one of them was telling the truth and the other one was lying. I picked up the telephone, I called the police department, I told the police officer that Leslie Lee Gosh was telling the truth and that John Roberts should be indicted for capital murder. Well, fortunately, they did a polygraph exam after I made my very informed judgment of who was telling the truth, and the polygraph examiner called me the day after the polygraph exam and told me that he had completed the polygraph exam of Leslie Lee Gosh, and that the only time that Leslie Lee Gosh told the truth in the examination was when he was asked what his name was. So we made a deal with the other guy, and we prosecuted Leslie Lee Gosh, and we got a capital murder conviction, and he was executed. The other guy got a life sentence. Now, we were probably right. The polygraph exam was probably right. But the message that I want to share with you and that I will share with anybody who will listen to me is that any system that is driven by decisions that are made by human beings will produce mistakes. And the question that I would ask you and that I will conclude with is this. If you were absolutely certain that in death penalty cases you have a criminal justice system that is good and that produces accurate results most of the time, would that be good enough? I think the answer to that question, for me the answer to that question is no, that's not good enough. And I recognize that there's an inconsistency because I draw a line between capital murder cases and other kinds of criminal cases, and mistakes can be made on either side of that line. But the difference between a capital murder case and any other kind of criminal case is that you can undo wrongful convictions in other kinds of cases. You've done it here in Montana in 3 cases recently because of DNA testing. You can't undo a capital murder conviction that results in an execution. And